Hello and welcome to the Career Changers. Our guest today is Peter Karius, leadership and career coach, helping aspiring leaders go from imposters to corporate superstars. In Peter's words, the journey that was definitely not straightforward for me. Growing up, it was very clear that being employed was the only way to have a career. It took me years of ignoring my inner voice to actually come to the realization that I could not possibly remain in a corporate career for the next 13 years and then just retire one day. Once I made the leap, the real work began as I had jumped into the unknown and with insight, pick one of the most difficult times to start out in a new business venture. Today, Peter is going to share his wisdom and career change story with us. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we're going to start by looking at your background. And we're curious to know, how did you start your professional life? Or better, what was your first job?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first job right out of university was to join a graduate development program in procurement, actually at a large aerospace company in the UK. And that's where I ended up working for almost 9 years, just right out of university.
And what was your dream job when you were a child?
I wanted to become a professional golfer. So I was obsessed with golf. I still am, actually, in many ways. And so it's definitely something I wanted to do full-time growing up.
Mm. But that is not what you pursued. So what is your educational background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hold an undergraduate and a graduate degree in international business. And I studied in the UK, in Canada, and France for my undergraduate degree. And then I did my master's part-time as I was working full-time at the University of Birmingham.
So, well, we are the career changers. So obviously, one of our main topic is about making career change. And that's something that you have experienced in first person. So how and when did you start thinking about becoming a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was reflecting on this. The journey kind of started unconsciously several years ago. I got into personal development first, and then I hired a coach myself. And I was still working in the aerospace industry at the time. And I had a lot of time to think because I was constantly traveling back and forth between Germany and the US. So, a lot of time spent in planes. And there's only so many movies you can watch. So it's a good time to reflect. And, I noticed that I actually enjoyed learning about myself quite a lot. And as I learned more, I also want to share it with other people and kind of help them in the same way that the information was helping me. So that's how kind of very initially, and like I said, it was really unconscious, how I got kind of on that path at the beginning.
So how did you transition from one career to the other, and why?
Yeah. So as I was on this personal development journey, I started becoming more intentional about my life, but also my career. And I was reflecting on the fact that I didn't actually know why I had ended up where I ended up. So don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my job a lot. Actually, I enjoyed the people I was working with a lot. It was all very exciting. But I asked myself, why did I choose this path? And I actually had no answer. So I began to think about, well, what would I want to do? Kind of for the first time in my life, honestly, I was like, this kind of a curious question, like, what would you want to do, Peter? And becoming a coach, wasn't initially on the top of the list. But as I dug deeper and kind of thought about it more about what I want to get out of a career versus, a position, it became an actual option. I realized I really enjoy developing people, like working with people and developing them. I wanted to make a tangible impact and an impact that I could see as well. And I also wanted to have a certain degree of independence to kind of operate a business from different locations around the world. So that's really how that kind of transition came about.
So generally, career changers have to face many challenges before they can complete the transition to a new way of life and not just a new career. So what were the challenges that you had to face to overcome that you had to face, sorry, and to transition to a new career?
Yeah, absolutely. So hands down, it was mindset for me. I was very much an employee. I'd always worked for a company, like I said, almost kind of spent a decade at a multinational. And so that was really the biggest difference for me, that kind of mindset shift on, coming from being an employee, you get a paycheck at the end of the month. At least that's how it always was for me. In Germany, you get money at the end of the month. And so it was very, it was completely different. And I'm responsible for what goes on in the entire business right now. And so, kind of certainly doing marketing and sales was something that I just wasn't used to at all, because I was in the procurement side, so the opposite end. And, if I learned anything, it's that the mindset is so much more important, for setting up a business than, the strategies. And that kind of applies to not just business, but anything in life, in my opinion. Bob Proctor said it really well. And I think he said, mindset is 95% of success and strategy is 5%. So, if you don't do anything else other than work on your mindset, you're virtually guaranteed to be successful, actually, to become successful. So, I think there's so much information out there in terms of, like lead generation strategies, building funnels and so on. And, they all have their place, absolutely. But certainly as a coach, consultant, trainer, anything like that, in my opinion, you need to work on your mindset and continuously work on your mindset as well. And that was certainly the biggest challenge for me, to kind of make that shift of being a coach and being a business owner as well, an operator.
So your life has changed, I guess, after you change your career. So what is your typical day like today?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I'm not sure there is such a thing as a typical day. There are definitely elements that are typical. So every day starts out with study for me. So I always study for about an hour. And then I, because I'm committed to constantly growing and learning. And I believe that's really important, like I said, for a coach, but really for anyone, it's important. How you do that is very individual, obviously. And after that, I have a set of morning routines that I kind of do. They include different things, graduate exercise, meditation. And then I have a mix of calls with clients and prospects as well. I spend time engaging with my audience on social media and other ways as well. And then it's just, managing the business and doing creative work. So those are really kind of the constants of most days.
So I'm looking at the next question, actually thinking in my mind, the impostor syndrome, something that is everywhere when reading about career change. And I know many people that have been always mentioning to me how they felt in their careers. So it's something very common. And part of your work is to help ambitious professionals to overcome impostor syndrome. So for who has never heard of it, what is it and how is it affecting people during their journey to self-realization?
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't heard of it, you probably just not consciously heard of it, but you've probably experienced it anyway. So it's basically this kind of feeling like you're a fraud and not having the confidence in your own abilities to do something that you're doing or like already, or doing new things. And as you say, it shows up oftentimes when people go through change. In the workplace, it's either maybe people getting promoted or they're just getting generally more responsibility. So there is this new dimension of something that they're doing, and it's outside of their comfort zone or the thing that they typically do. And it can kind of often creep in. But at the end of the day, it's an emotion. It's a feeling that people are creating based on, their thoughts in the types of situations where they're experiencing imposter syndrome. And as people become more self-aware, as you say, the self-realization, they typically start understanding the connection between thoughts and emotions, or thoughts and feelings. And that's great, because that's actually a really good point to then address the imposter syndrome from that perspective, because we do create it ourselves. It is the way we think of ourselves that creates the emotion of feeling like an imposter.
So I'm sure you may have mentioned something already in your answer, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway.
Definitely.
As individuals, what do we need to look at to understand the roots of imposter syndrome? Is it actually something that is connected with our self-esteem?
Yeah, so like I said, it really comes down to our thoughts. And, let me just emphasize something which, was eye-opening for me And I know has been eye-opening for many of the people that I work with and who have just shared this with in general. We choose our thoughts and we decide whether we accept the things we think or whether we reject them. So the root cause of imposter syndrome is our own thinking. And yes, it's connected to self-esteem, because that is, again, pretty simply put, is the way we feel about ourselves as a result of how we think about ourselves. So yeah, there's definitely a connection between the two.
Is there a quick exercise that our listeners can experiment to connect and overcome their imposter syndrome? Maybe not to overcome yet, but maybe at least to connect.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely like some quick things you can do just to at least get you started. Yeah, I agree. I think overcoming is maybe it's not a quick, definitely not maybe, it's not a quick fix. The one thing I'd encourage people to do is to write down a list of all the reasons why you seeing yourself as an imposter is simply not true. So basically just write down, what objective facts are there and subjective facts, but start with the objective ones because you can't dispute them. Why are you not an imposter? And when you're in the moment, it's easy to find evidence for why you're right to feel like an imposter. When you're in a situation that makes you feel like a fraud, when you may be uncomfortable, it's something new and you just don't feel like you belong there, it's very easy to look around you and see, okay, well, this person will be better suited for this, or I just don't know the answers, which therefore makes me, not the right fit for this. So that there's plenty of things you can do in the moment when you're in that situation. But when you kind of step away from it, you slow down a bit and you take a few minutes to actually reflect on it, you find lots of reasons also why that's not true, why you're actually not an imposter. And then once you've written that list down, and you should, by the way, you should be adding to it all the time. Like, don't stop adding to it, because you keep on, as you ask yourself that question, why am I not an imposter, you'll come up with more reasons for why that's true. And then put it somewhere you can access it quickly, maybe like your notes app on your phone or something like that, just where you can bring it up. And then before going into situations that tend to cause you to feel like an imposter, read that list and give yourself plenty of positive evidence, positive reinforcement for why you're not an imposter. Because when you've been reminding yourself of all the reasons why you're awesome, like why you're not an imposter, it's a lot more difficult to feel like an imposter in that moment. But yeah, ultimately kind of overcoming it longer term and forming a better self-image of yourself requires more work. But this is certainly an excellent starting point to get you through, like, more tactically through the situations on a day-to-day basis.
So during our journey to reach success, and with success, I mean whatever is meaningful to us, sure. We always think that external factors are very important, but sometimes we can be the first one to affect the final result through self-sabotage. So is imposter syndrome connected in any way with self-sabotage? And in your experience as a coach, how often people are self-sabotaging themselves?
Yeah. I suppose you could say it's a form of self-sabotage, yes. I don't have any statistics on this, but I'd say, we're constantly practicing self-sabotage on a daily basis. The moment you say something like, I can't do this, or, maybe it's for other people, not for me, that's the moment, you're sabotaging your own success. And, in most cases, if not in all cases, really, there's probably no basis for saying or thinking that. So yeah, I think it's definitely that, and self-sabotage is rife. We do this to ourselves all the time.
So you're working a lot with professional people that and help them to progress in their career or achieve their full potential. So what are the signs that indicate that our leadership potential is still unfulfilled?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd ask myself, do I have the desire, like the genuine desire, the genuine interest in leading others? And if that's the case, am I currently leader? And when I say leader, I'm not talking about your title, but how you're showing up in general, in the workplace or wherever it is you'd like to lead. Like, it could be different situations, could be in your social life, could be in a club, whatever that is. And if there is a gap between where you currently are and where you want to be, then that's a good indicator that there is unfulfilled potential, because you have the desire, but you're not there. So there's a gap, right? So I just encourage listeners to really tune into their own intuition on that point, and just to kind of do that simple analysis that I just suggested, and really just see, do I have that gap? And if I do, then yeah, there's a good chance that it's not a good chance that it is unfulfilled in that case.
What are the right steps that we can take to develop our leadership potential?
Start by developing yourself and leading yourself. I think the way I look at leadership is, you lead yourself, you then become able to lead others, and then you develop other leaders. And so what I mean by leading yourself is, what does it take to lead people? Now, there's many things that come to mind, right? So the ability to make decisions, providing direction, being able to motivate, giving feedback, having empathy, lots of different things, so on and so forth, right? And in my opinion, you need to be able to do those things for yourself first, before you can then credibly do them for others. And as you start leading yourself, then you're able to lead others, and then you're also able to develop others. But the way I see it, and the way I practice leadership development, is the individual needs to be ready first and foremost, in my view.
So going back to your career change, here we always talk about transferable skills, because something really essential when someone is looking and moving from one career to the other. So what life or transferable skills have you learned from your different jobs?
Where to even begin? I think there's so much to unpack in a career, right? I think what stands out for me, probably, amongst everything, is how to build relationships with people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, just completely different from just how I am. And I had the privilege to interact with people from really a wide range of all walks of life, all the way from people on the shop floor to CEOs, and from different parts of the world completely. So being able to build rapport at all levels with people who I might really not share much is probably by far one of the most valuable skills that I've developed in my career.
So our listeners and followers are generally interested in listening to advice that would ease their journey to self-realization. So what type of advice would you give to anyone that is going through that journey?
I'd say to people, be really open and give yourself permission to learn. I'd encourage people to just be really open about questioning their views on most things, if not everything. I think humility, and wanting to gain self-awareness is key. Because if you approach it from kind of a place where I already know everything, then it's probably not going to be a very fruitful endeavor. So just be really open about what you're going to find, and equally be open to new things and new approaches. So for example, when I kind of started out, one of the things that was suggested to me was meditation. Now, obviously meditation has been around for I don't know, millennia, I guess. It's been around forever. But I had some misconceptions about what it actually was. And I just remember being very skeptical about it. It's kind of funny to say that now, actually. It's kind of, but that's where I was at the time. But now looking back, and certainly today, I practice meditation on a regular basis, and it's really providing me with insights every time I do it. But if I hadn't had an open mind, I probably would have just dismissed it because I had some preconception, which wasn't even accurate. So yeah, just being really open and let yourself learn and let yourself experience new things, and allow yourself to gain insights, which whatever they may be, and they may be very different to what you would have expected.
And instead, what advice would you give to someone looking to change their career?
Yeah, I'd say look at what matters to you first. Don't look at the job or the entrepreneurial endeavor, the kind of the label, if that sounds interesting. I'd always recommend to look at your purpose, your why, your reason for doing something. And, it doesn't have to be something lofty. It can be just something very down to earth as well. Like, it could be anything from saving the rainforest to, providing for your family. And I guess sometimes I feel like purpose has, people think, oh God, this has to have this big, mission to save humanity. It's just something, whatever matters to you. That's what I would recommend to start out with. And actually, I recently read a book on this subject called The Purpose Path by Nicholas Pearce. And he proposes a set of 5 questions, which I think are a great starting point to start looking at this. And so the first one was, what is success? How do you find success for yourself? And that's I would encourage everybody to look at that from a very, very individual lens, rather than, you kind of alluded to it before, from maybe like, what is success for you versus what does society expect success is. Doesn't matter. What is success for you? The next thing is, who am I? So really this kind of building a self-awareness. And then, why am I here? And then, am I running the right race? So, are the things that I'm doing, are they actually in alignment with me? And then, am I running the race well? So is what I'm doing, am I doing a good job of it? I love those 5 questions. And I think they're a great starting point to get more of an answer of, what is the potential purpose in my life? And the how, as in, the job, the entrepreneur, and whatever it is you end up doing, is kind of a byproduct of you going through that exercise. That's what I encourage people to do.
So if anyone would like to get in touch with you and discover more about your work, how they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very present on LinkedIn. So just search for Peter Karius, Karius, my last name, and you'll find me there, or my website as well, peterkarius.com.
Thank you. So now we are reaching the end of our episode, and the last question is, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
I love that question. I think we all wish we had that opportunity. I would say be very discerning about whom you ask for advice. I think it's very important to ask for a variety of opinions, from different kinds of people. The drawback is you asking people of their opinions, and they're looking at, whatever you're asking for through their own lens of their life and their career, based on their own experiences, which may not actually be relevant to you, right? And you might not know that in the moment, but it could just be, there could be some beliefs there that actually don't align with yours. So I'd say be discerning who you ask a lot of people, but when you get advice, ask yourself whether you actually want to believe that, and trust yourself to decide whether it is actually the right advice for you. So feel empowered, even though you've asked someone that might have 30 years more experience than you, still ask yourself, is that really what I want to believe? Do I choose to accept the limits that person has set for themselves and now is imposed upon me? So I'd love to be able to tell myself that.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's a great answer. And this is one of our questions we ask to all our guests. And I actually never heard this answer before. So definitely something to point out.
Yeah.
Sometimes we may ask for opinion that we are not happy with what we hear back.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career change story and wisdom.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
A last message to our listeners: don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you again.